the biggest thing we get asked about is, what are you pricing? How are you doing it? So we went from $250,000 in debt to now running $1 million shop, all on this exact pricing that I am about to walk you through.
Are you wrapping cars more than 12 hours a day, every day? Working nonstop but can barely get by? Burnout, missing deadlines, and wondering just how much longer you can keep this up?
That was us too. We started our wrap shop buried under $250,000 in debt, and it felt absolutely impossible. But we dug out, built a profitable shop, and are still in the trenches of owning and operating a wrap shop. We're here to share what we learned along the way so that you don't make the same mistakes that we did.
And we're here to help you with the business side of the wraps, like pricing, building a team, streamlining your systems, ultimately so that you can run your shop and your shop stops running you.
Welcome to the Wrap Ops Podcast, brought to you by Wrap Fam Unleashed. We are doing the most requested episode, so I hope you're sitting on the edge of your seat because this one is all about how to come up with your pricing. Probably the biggest thing we get asked about is, what are you pricing? How are you doing it? All of the things involved. So if you kind of feel like maybe you're pulling numbers out of your butt, aren't doing any math involved in the process of your pricing, or maybe you feel like you're completely off from maybe what competitors are pricing, definitely listen to the remainder of this podcast. We went from $250,000 in debt to now running $1 million shop, all on this exact pricing that I am about to walk you through. Now, I'm sure you can listen to a bunch of other podcasts about how other wrap shops price their products. Pick your poison, I guess. There's really no right or wrong way to do something. I'm just letting you guys know what has worked really well for our wrap shop. And just to remind you guys, at our shop, we do not do any sort of like signs, like electric or those hard signs. We simply do vehicle wraps and wall wraps. And that is it. That is our main bread and butter. We also technically, do PPF. But I like to joke, anything sticky, anything vinyl, that's us. So let's get right on into it. So the first thing is, when you're coming up with this pricing structure, it needs to be teachable. So a lot of the time, and even when I first started with performance wraps, I noticed that the pricing at a time was all in Andrew's head. And I just was like, are you going to quote wraps forever and be the only person in this entire business that can quote here? Like, that's just not scalable. So you need to come up with a pricing structure that is scalable. One of the biggest mistakes I personally see with trying to quote a job is people really like to quote, this is how much material we're going to use, and then this is the amount of labor hours. I have always had someone sending our quotes that has basically never installed before. So having them or hoping that they would have the knowledge to know, okay, this car is going to take 10 hours or this truck is going to take 5 would take so long for me to teach them, because I basically would have to teach them how to wrap first. And there's, as we all know, so many variables in all the different card types. Is it a full wrap, partial wrap, lettering? Are we doing door jams? How crazy is it? So the method that I have come up with along with Andrew is really something that you can teach someone who does not know anything about install and really does not know anything about design. Obviously, they know a little bit to be dangerous, but I could not throw them on a car and expect them to wrap it. So I hope that that's helpful for you, because you guys know that I want you to grow your team and I want you to get out of the day-to-day. There's no reason you have to quote every single job if you are the owner of your shop. This is something that you can delegate. So like I said, it needs to be simple and repeatable. The other thing is that you want to make sure it's a system that if you have one person on your team quote one job and another person on your team quote the same job, are you somewhat close? The odds of it being exactly the same dollar amount are going to be pretty slim, but are they in the ballpark of each other? And that's your goal, so that everyone is quoting pretty similar. You don't want one person quoting way different than someone else and there being all these different profit margins going on, so that you have consistency in your business. And then the other thing that I also want to bring out is that we're really going for speed here. So when it comes to sending out quotes, if you're the bottleneck and everyone's waiting on you to send quotes, and I know how it is when you have 15 people waiting on you for a quote, you're just losing all those sales because they're going to the competitor that can send it faster. So if you think about it, maybe you train someone on how to quote and they're a little off from you. Maybe you lose a couple $100 here and there, but the speed that they are sending those quotes out is gaining you more business. So you want something that can be fast and something that everyone on your team who's taught how to quote, they can confidently tell a customer, this is how we quote. It's math. This isn't a haggle system. We're not bartering. And I can't tell you how many customers I have honestly had to say, I'm sorry that this is the math on it. And of course, there's discounts and things if you're bringing X vehicles, all these other variables, but that's not what we're getting into today. We're just going over basic pricing. So my very first piece of advice on how we do it is you need a vehicle square footage chart. I'm not paid to say this, but Pro Vehicle Outlines, if you want to sponsor us, we would love to have you. Pro Vehicle Outlines, we buy their square footage chart every year. Like right now, it goes all the way up through vehicles through 2026. And it is literally a chart that has year, make, and model. And then it has all the way to the right, the total vehicle square footage. It breaks it down even further than that on like hood and side and roof and all those things. We don't use that a ton. We really just use that main large total square footage number. So that's the first thing is go ahead and get you that chart. Then you need to come up with your multipliers. What that means is basically we charge X amount of dollars per square foot for a sedan, X amount of dollars per square foot for a box truck, X amount for a truck, X amount for a van. They're all different vehicle types. And it takes a minute. It's not something that you can say our wraps are $10 a square foot and it's that across the board, because you're going to not make as much money as you could or overprice jobs when you shouldn't due to complexity. So how do you come up with what your multiplier is? You are going to have to do your own math. So obviously we're in Dayton, Ohio, so I can't answer what your price should be in Las Vegas, Nevada. I have no idea. So here are some things to consider when you're deciding on your multiplier. The first one, as I kind of mentioned earlier, is the complexity of the vehicle. So what you're thinking is, how many labor hours is that going to take me? So this is kind of going to replace that whole knowing the labor hours, and we're going to factor that into our per multiplier cost. So for example, I know my team can wrap a box truck way faster than they can wrap a commercial SUV. So you take that into account. Your box truck will be a lower square footage cost than your sedan, your SUVs, the more intricate vehicles that have bumpers, handles, mirrors, those intricate regions. The next thing is, what material are you going to use? At our shop, we strictly only use high quality brands of vinyl. So I've seen other shops do discounts for using a lower quality brand of vinyl. I think that would add more kind of friction to your process, could be difficult. I'm not a fan of that, but you pick your own pricing journey. But for us, it's pretty standard. We know our color change price if we're, changing the color of a car to purple, green, whatever. And we know our print price if we're doing a commercial HVAC van or one of those business clients. So those are our two material types, and they're within, a few dollars of each other. So nothing hugely different there. So you need to know, what material are you going to use? And then you need to know your own shop's fixed cost. So what is your rent or your mortgage? What's your electric bill? What's your water bill? This is where that price difference comes into play when you own a brick and mortar building and you're trying to compete with the person who wraps out of their brother's garage. Obviously, there is a huge fixed cost difference there. And so whenever someone says, oh, I got another quote from someone and it's half the price, always ask who. Ask them to send you the quote. You will learn a lot from looking at your competitors' quotes. So we honestly always do that. Like, oh, send me the quote. I'll see if I can match it. And just so you know, we only will price match reputable shops or if it's within a certain profit margin. That being said, if it's a shop I have never heard of, or it's not even an invoice, it's like a number scribbled on a sticky note, that's not going to work for me. There's a reason that our price is going to be so much higher, because there's a difference in kind of caliber of business. So have some confidence about you. If you're pricing higher because you have a front desk person there 24/7 answering the phones, able to, deal with any customer complaints. It's a big claim to fame for us. I've always said, a big draw to performance wraps is I have a front desk person sitting right there ready for you to call them. I can't ghost you. I pay someone to be available to you. So use what you have in your sales pitch and to justify your price for what it is and be confident in it.
After years of running a wrap shop, I've learned this. Your supplier should be a partner, not a question mark. That's why we trust Grimco. For over 5 years now, they have delivered on time and backed us when it mattered most. There's enough to manage in this business. Your supplier should not be one of them. Set up your new account today. Use code RAPOPS5 for 5% off your first order with Grimco.
So once you factor all of those variables in, you can start figuring out what that multiplier is. Is it $20 a square foot, 25 a square foot, 10 a square foot, whatever it might be, and do some test runs. Practice with some of your make and models of vehicles on that square footage chart, see the end number that pops out, and confirm that that number is good. You're comfortable with that number. Or is it like, whoa, that's way high. I can't tell you how many times we've adjusted our pricing and I realize, okay, I think this is coming out like way higher or way lower than what I think the intention was. And we adjust from there. So you're going to have to take some time with this and do some trial and error, but you'll figure it out. And then moving on, of course, you probably have partial wraps and lettering. So partial wraps, I've made this super simple. Figure out what your full wrap price is and multiply that number by 30% or 50% or 75%, however much coverage you are doing on that vehicle. And that is essentially your cost. Now, a big thing I do want to point out here is this one was a really hard one for us to sell to clients because they had a really hard time visualizing what is 30% coverage, what is 50% coverage. So what I actually did was I asked our designer to come up with mock-ups on a van, on a sedan, on a truck of what that would roughly look like and a very plain branding thing. If you want to look at our website, you can see it on there. But that's a night and day difference since we have been able to provide visuals to customers of what their options are just to kind of get an idea in their head. Now, if they want to add on a little decal on the hood, let them add a decal on the hood. It's not worth the giant argument. It's not worth adding the $50. Just, go with it. So your price should be a little bit on the higher end to account for them adding some extra things here and there. And then the last one, if you do lettering or decals, this one, in my opinion, from working front desk for multiple years before I started doing all the other parts of the business, was the hardest one to sell. Because my first question, they would say, hey, I want some decals on the side of my van. And my first question would be, oh, okay, yeah, like how much square footage are you thinking? I would say 0 out of a million times did someone know what the answer to that question was. It was such a point of friction. They never knew. It confused them. And we never closed lettering jobs because of it. So I did the same exact thing I did with the partial wraps. I came up with visuals. We actually call it a good, better, best. We have 3 options. So if you call our shop and you want lettering on your truck, okay, I send you the graphic. Do you want good, better, or best? And that's pretty much it. And we close them so much faster because now they can see. And then I can clearly translate that to the design team of like, this is roughly how much coverage this client is wanting on their vehicle, and this is how much they've paid for. So the visuals make a huge difference. We made those visuals before AI was a huge thing. I guarantee you could probably have AI at this point generate you some images if you did not want to pay for a designer. I do think the designer route is better. You can make it more custom, less chat GPT looking. But just a little hack, if you absolutely had to, you could probably use AI to get away with that. I like to limit options with our customers. So the lettering, doing the good, better, best option, I think really reduces stress. One of my favorite analogies is if you go to Cane's Chicken. I love Cane's. I think they have 5 things on the menu. It might even be 4. I personally love that. I know what I'm going to order very quickly. I know what I'm going to get, what to expect, and it's done. I'm not sitting down at a restaurant like Cheesecake Factory and I'm overwhelmed with how many things does Cheesecake Factory have on their menu? Like 600, 200, I don't know, something crazy, even though Cheesecake Factory is good. But the point I'm trying to make here is I do think customers do better with fewer options, but you do have to ask more questions to kind of figure out what they're looking for and then present the options that would be best for them. Other things to add on to pricing. So that is basically think your print and installation. At our shop, we do print our own wraps. So my per square footage price does include the print itself. If you aren't doing print, then you need to factor that into your multiplier. The other things you want to pay attention to is what about the design fee? So we have it really easy. We just do an hourly design fee and the designer clocks in and out for however long it takes to complete the design. And we do estimate that in the beginning of like, we think it's going to take 4 hours. We think it's going to take 10 hours, whatever that may be. And we will call and let them know if it's going way over. And if it's under, well, obviously the customer is going to be happy if their quote is reduced and we will reduce their line item quote for that. The other one is vinyl removal. Again, that is an hourly one. I can't tell you how many times that has actually saved our butt when you get into removal and it's taking way longer than you think. Of course, communicate with the customer, call them, let them know. I know I quoted you for 4 hours, but we're 2 hours in and we're not even halfway done. You want to make that phone call and kind of let them know this price is going up. I think maybe once or twice we've had someone say like, just go ahead and wrap it up and, I'll take it from there or whatever. But the vinyl removal being an hourly rate is really good. And you can also do that for extended prep. If you're nervous about people not dropping off their vehicle clean or things like that, you could charge a cleaning fee and make it hourly. And that's another tactic you could do just to make sure all of your bases are covered. Now, the reason I do all of these as line items, if you notice, there's not a price that's like $3,000, and that includes the design, print, and install of the wrap. I want the clients to see that design is a product, that is a service, that is a trained professional doing that for you, and that is why we charge additional for it. There is not a job that comes through our shop that does not get charged something in design. If anything, they get 1 hour because we have to run it through the printer and I have to have my print operator take that time to do that. So bare minimum, every job in our shop has a $95 design fee on there. And like I said, you figure out your design fee for what works best for you and your area. A couple other things to consider to make sure you're covering your bases: travel fees. So of course, if you are driving, free hours for an install, I would make sure that you are covering that and including that in your bill. We also have had extended height fees. So if you're doing wall wraps, if you need to rent a scissor lift, make sure that you're covered on that. We've messed up that. And again, all of these items, I could give you 50 ways that we have messed it up before. So this is all coming from experience of things that I wish I would have known when I first started pricing things out. And then the other thing that I want to wrap it up here and make sure that I touch on is something that I have noticed is people's pricing has been the same for 10 years, 20 years. There has to be a price increase at some point. You've probably noticed when you try to hire people, they want a higher wage. The cost of the vinyl is more expensive. Everything is more expensive. So we do have to raise our prices to kind of be in flow with that. So don't be too nervous to raise your prices. I think it would be easier to do a smaller price increase more often than to do one massive one like every other year, every 5 years or something like that. But if you are competing with other shops in your area that are way underquoting your pricing to the point that you probably don't even know how they're making margin on it, just let them keep doing that because it's not sustainable. But the worst thing you can do is just drop your price to match that completely. So we used to offer price match at our shop, and then it started getting completely out of hand where we were like punching the numbers on it. And we're like, we're not even going to make money if we take this job on. So respectfully, we have to pass. So keep your standards, keep preaching your value to customers. Of course, to have high pricing, you do have to have a high quality product. You have to have a warranty. You have to be able to rewrap things and deal with customer complaints. All of your things have to be pristine if you want to be top of the market. If you want to be bottom of the market, then I guess you could probably get away with not doing very well on those items. But I don't believe in that philosophy. I think you should do the best in everything that you can and treat your customers as well as possible. But I also understand charging accordingly for that. So I encourage you guys to do the same. Get your money, get your bag, get your pricing for your wraps. And if it makes you feel better at all, let's see, I can pull it up right here. Our internal pricing guide document is 52 pages. It started off as 1, and it has made its way to 52. Because anytime we price something new, like for example, we price Jeep Wranglers at a completely different price than any other car. If you've wrapped a Jeep Wrangler, you know exactly why I'm saying that. It has its own whole page on how we price Jeep Wranglers. Food trucks are another one on how we price food trucks and what we cover. So when you kind of run into those specialty type vehicles, if you will, you kind of keep adding to your page. So create your pricing guide, make it be a living, breathing document, revisit it each year. Have your team train and learn off of it, and it will make your life so much easier when the quotes are not running through you as the owner. So I hope this helps. This is our big pricing episode. If you have any questions, you can always email us at info@wrapops.com. My name is Tanner, and thank you guys so much for listening to us, and we will catch you in the next episode.
The Wrap Institute, the largest online wrap training platform, now with a special offer. Use our code WRAPOPS15 for 15% off your order.